Hello friends, we are here back with stability analysis of discrete time systems. And as we had seen earlier that any discrete control loop that can be in a feedback form represented by this transfer function dz, which is controller output divided by the error input. In the general form, you have a numerator of the order m and denominator of the order n over here, and we shall be analyzing this system with this particular transfer function in discrete time domain. Friends, we can always take partial fractions of this transfer function, and we will be having these kind of partial fractions as you can see over here, and we go up to, as we had gone up to n over here. So this also is supposed to have n different fractions, and we have this p1, p2, p3 and pn. So these are all the roots, and these are roots of the characteristic equation. We had seen that we had this as the denominator, and when we put this denominator is equal to 0, we get it. What we get is called characteristic equation. When we solve it, we get these poles, and these poles can be represented normally as a complex number. And what we see is that as these poles are available, we have some intermediate term, we call it as k. So as we take the k, as we take this k, and the output what we get, we have to have in terms of time. So we have to take the z transform inverse of this term, this any term. This k can be anything, like this is can be anything from any. The n is the sample. This n can be 0, n can be 1, n can be 2, and so on and so forth. So this is the general expression for the output in time domain for any of the samples over here. As we have seen over here, what we get from here is that this pole, we will be analyzing this pole pk. We have to analyze this pole pk, and this pk, which we have taken as a complex number alpha plus j beta. And if we see the magnitude of this, the magnitude of this is given by pk modulus, and it has some angle associated with it, which is given by e the power j omega. We shall be knowing what is pk in modulus and what is omega in terms of angle, in terms of tan inverse, so that we shall be examining. And ultimately our idea is to explore this value ck exponential n times log natural of pk. This is as we get it in the form of z inverse to get the output in time domain in the form of the functions of all the n different samples which are available to us in the form of the signal, in the form of the signal over here. So we come back to this pk. What is this pk modulus? What is the magnitude of this? If we see, that is given by under root of alpha square plus beta square. You can very well see this is an imaginary number, and then the magnitude is given by root of alpha square plus beta square, and the angle of course is given by, as it's very clear, the angle is omega is given by tan inverse of beta upon alpha. Beta is the imaginary part and alpha is the real part. So this is something known to us right from the first semester. You might have studied in your some course in the numbers over here. Come back to this point that we shall be exploring the value of log natural pk, and this log natural pk in terms is equal to the real part and the imaginary part. So you have the magnitude part is over here, and the imaginary part of this is over here. So when you take log of pk, it means you are taking log of the magnitude over here plus j omega. And that if we explore it very carefully, we find that we are interested in exponential times n times log natural pk. This was the value which we had seen in the last slide. And when we take exponential term of this, exponential of this into log natural of this, if we expand it, the value of log natural of pk, we put the value of log natural of pk in this format, we get this term also gets expanded in this format. And then we open the brackets. We all know that e to the power a plus b is equal to e to the power a into e to the power b. So this plus sign, it becomes multiplication sign as we open the brackets. This exponential goes in. So this is again some simple mathematics. And what we need to know over here is that this is something very important, that this term exponential nj omega, this can always be written in the form of cos n omega plus j times sine of n omega. Now you know the cos value is always bounded. You know that cos cannot go more than 1, cannot go less than minus 1. Same is the case with sine. Sine cannot go more than 1, cannot go less than 1. Whatsoever may be the value of n, whatsoever may be the value of omega. So the sum of this will always be bounded. This is something very simple, but it needs to be paid some attention, that it has to be, this value has to be quite bounded as such. So this is always bounded for any value of n. N may go as high as it feels like. We don't have to care much about it. Its value will always be bounded. So this portion is taken care of. This portion is taken care of. This, of course, we have to be very be assured of. We need not worry about this portion. This portion will always remain bounded for any value of n. So we have to now focus on the other part which is left over here. That is this part which we have seen over here. This part is primarily we have to pay attention on. And even this is not very tough, as we see that we will be exploring one by one what will the value of pk. See, it's exponential raised to power log natural of pk. Now let us explore three possibilities. Let us explore three possibilities, that this pole, this is less than 1, or this is equal to 1, or the magnitude of this is greater than 1. So any of the three cases, let it be less than 1, equal to 1, or greater than 1. But if this value of pk is less than 1, then log natural of that will be negative, right? So this is, we see that log natural of this will be negative, and we have to take exponential of something which is negative. So this, as such, as the value of n increases, as the value of n increases, e the power minus 1, e the power minus 2, minus 3, minus 4, something, as it becomes larger and larger and larger, the value of e the power minus something very large, it tends to be 0. It will never go negative, number one. And as long as the log natural of pk, this exponential term, is negative, it will always tend towards 0. It cannot go beyond that. Further, if we explore it for the value of pk equal to 1, right, then log natural of something 1 is called 0. And when we take the exponential of that, we will again get this as 1. E the power 0 is 1. So as long as this value, as long as the value of magnitude is less than 1, the entire value, it will be tending towards 0, but it will never become anything beyond 1. It will be lying something between 0 and 1. And for pk coming equal to 1, this output finally will be equal to 1. And in case this pk goes greater than 1, that is the poles, they pole, the magnitude of the poles, it becomes more than 1, then as you see, log natural of this will become positive. E is power something positive means that it can go outside 1, it can go anything, it can go anything. Like as the value of n increases, this also increases and tends to become as high as the case may be. For n approaching to infinity, this also may approach infinity. So we see that as the value of n increases to infinity, this value reduces from 1 to 0. As the value of n increases to infinity, this always remains 1. And in this case, for n increasing tending to infinity, this also becomes infinity. So if we see that as the values of n over here are increasing, right, and it should increase as in the sequence from n is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on and so forth. we see that with every increment in n, the value as such of the function related to for any pole which is less than 1, it will tend towards 0. It is going to be bounded. So the system is absolutely stable provided the roots are having magnitude less than 1. In this case, it is equal to 1. It will remain always equal to 1. It's just marginally stable as long as the roots are equal to 1. And in case the magnitude of roots becomes greater than 1, in that case, as n increases for every subsequent value of the sample over here, we find that the value of this function, it tends to be infinity. It means it becomes unbounded. Here in the third case, the system is unstable. System is stable here, system is marginally stable here, and system is becoming unstable here. So what do we conclude? We conclude that as long as the magnitude of the roots as analyzed in this discrete time domain, as you can call it in Z domain. In this Z domain, what we see is that if the roots are less than 1, the magnitude of roots is less than 1, system is stable. Equal to 1, system is marginally stable. And if this is greater than 1, system tends to become unstable. So this is what we come to the conclusion in this portion of the analysis. So finally, we can just write it that the function fk and t is bounded when the root pk lies inside or at the most on the unit circle in the complex plane, as we have seen earlier. We will see it further in another perspective also for the same kind of thing, which is I find personally very interesting, that we shall be exploring in the next slide. We see that the system is stable if all its poles, that is roots of its characteristic equation, they lie either inside or on the unit circle in the complex plane. That is, they have a magnitude less than or equal to unity. So this we represent diagrammatically in the form as shown in this figure. As you can very well see that for any pole which is lying inside the unit circle, this system is going to produce a stable pole, stable output. So we call it, this is a stable pole, and this is a pole which is producing instability, and the pole on the circle will be marginally stable. So we examine for all the poles and check the magnitude of all the poles. Even if a single pole is lying outside the unit circle, means the magnitude is more than 1, in that case we say the system is not stable. This is one very simple way of determining the stability of the system in discrete time domain. Another way, another perspective to analyze the things in the same domain over here, and that is that we all know, we had seen in the previous sessions, that this z is equal to e to the power ts, here t is capital T, and this capital T is nothing but the sampling time over here. And further, we have seen that we had taken s as a complex number. We have been doing this from I don't know how many semesters, is taken as alpha plus j times beta, and therefore this, put the value of s over here in z, and you will get z is equal to e to the power alpha t plus e to the power j times beta t. And we see the magnitude of that will be what is given by this portion. This portion determines the magnitude. So z magnitude is given by e to the power alpha t. So that is what we come over here. And this means that for all alpha, what we say normally in case of any normal Laplace thing, that stability of the system can be determined from the poles, and the poles lie on the left side of the imaginary axis. That means that if alpha is negative, alpha is not 0, then the system will be stable, right? Here in this case, if alpha is negative, put alpha negative over here, e to the power something negative, e to the power something negative means it will always be less than 1. If you put this alpha equal to 0, e to the power 0 means it will always be equal to 1. And put alpha is greater than 1, and as you put alpha greater than 1, here it becomes e to the power something positive, and then this value of t, it goes on increasing, it's multiplied by n is equal to 1 2 3 4 5. This becomes unstable because alpha on the alpha on the right of the plane means system is unstable, and here it means that alpha on the right means alpha is positive. This e to the power something positive means that the magnitude of that is greater than 1. So as we map this s onto z, I repeat, as we map this s onto z, we find that as long as s is negative, this z will always be less than 1. The moment this s becomes positive, this z becomes greater than 1. And we already know that for s to be negative, if this alpha is negative, we are talking of alpha. If alpha is negative, then we say the system is stable, poles on the left system is stable, and that can be mapped onto the z plane, and we can say that for magnitude of z less than 1, magnitude, it's not irrespective of its plus or minus, its magnitude is less than 1, system is stable, because in that case s is pole lying on the left, and that is stable system. Pole lying on the right, that means unstable system. S becoming more than 0, positive, means this z magnitude becoming greater than 1. So as you map this s onto z, we find that for unstable systems all this s was positive, and in z domain for unstable system all this z will be having magnitude greater than 1. So this is what we see, we have mapped on the rule of stability of in s, determined from s we have now mapped on to z, and this mapping is again can be shown in the figure below. As you can see over here, we have the system of stability. As for the s plane, this is the region of stability. Any s lying on the left of the imaginary plane is stable, and that gets mapped onto z as having magnitude less than 1. It means you can draw a unit circle, and in between the unit circle the magnitude of this is going to be less than 1. So this stable region in the s plane gets mapped onto this region of unit circle in the z plane. So we determine the roots and see whether the roots are within the circle, system is stable, outside the circle system is unstable. As we see, this is 1:1 mapping, corresponding mapping of the poles over here to the poles over here. So friends, I think I have made myself very clear on the stability analysis of discrete time system. In case you have any queries related to this kind of stability in the discrete time system, you can always contact me through any other means, through WhatsApp, through phone, face-to-face interaction, Zoom interactions, and so on and so forth. I hope you have enjoyed learning. I thank you for being with me for this session again, and I wish you a very happy and safe stay. Bye bye.